Good afternoon. It is 1:33 on Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. And this is time for a fiscal year 23 preliminary budget workshop for Juvenile Probation Department. Our Commissioner Smith, also present is Commissioner White, Commissioner Van Beek. Monica Reeves is our deputy clerk. Joining us is Chief Deputy and Controller for the Clerk's Office, Zach Wesley. Oh, I did say Wesley. You don't want to be an attorney. He likes numbers. And then with Elder Catalana, she's our director for juvenile probation. And I'm going to turn it right over to you because clearly I should be talking today.
It's okay. It's after lunch, so I hope I bring that sleep through. Thank you for the opportunity to explain my budget. Juvenile probation has 4 divisions. We have 26 full-time employees, and I'm not requesting any new employees. However, I am requesting some part-time funds for a part-time position, and I'll explain that a little later. I'm also requesting that 4 of my probation officers be promoted to senior probation officers because of their performance. And so that's a discussion that I had with Zach. And it's not reflective in the current for promotions. So if you don't have any questions at this time, I can move into the first division. First division, we call it the juvenile probation 300 division. In this division, we account for all the revenue that we get from the different partners that have graciously helped us provide good juvenile probation. At this time, we have St. Luke's and Optum is being our supporters of different programming. Optum of Idaho will be has pledged to give me $3,000 for in this coming fiscal year to continue to support the GED program and buy snacks for the kids who attend the GED program in juvenile probation. St. Luke's will be funding what we call the 2Cs program. And that has already started, and again, they pledged to provide me $2,000 again for the next fiscal year to carry out that program. In this division, we also track all the fees that juvenile probation collects. I've separated the fees that we collect from court order fees to fees that juvenile probation receives. Based on the collections that we've had, I'm projecting that we'll probably get about $20,000 from the court fees. Those are cases where juveniles have been ordered by the court to pay either a monthly cost of supervision or some other fee. The juvenile projected about $30,000 in revenue from diversion, urinalysis test, and other fees that are done. So again, these are fees that are not court order, but because we handle many of the cases outside of the court system, we collect fees on that. Any questions about the revenues? No? Okay. In this particular division, we have 13 staff, full-time staff paid out of. In terms of the expenses are directly tied to the revenue that we're going to have, with a couple of exceptions. The community incentive program, again, they're pass-through monies that we get from the state based on expenses. And we recently signed an MOU with them to access that funding up to $200,000. We also recently signed a contract with a SUDS coordinator, and again, we will be accessing up to $50,000 from the Department of Juvenile Corrections to pay that coordinator to carry out the duties for the district. The only thing that is coming out of property taxes or the county in this particular division is the set fee that we pay the case management system, also known as CMS, for their support of our database. We also have a contract, copier contract that I raised up to $6,000 from $4,500 due to the expenses and everything going on. Other than that, and like I said, this is a pretty basic division, and I'll stand for any questions if you have any in this.
How many? This is pretty straightforward.
The next division is what we call the parole block, the 804. In this division, we have 6 full-time employees paid out of. The revenue that we are projected to receive from the Idaho Department of Juvenile Corrections to fund the juvenile probation is $404,236. Again, that comes in installments. Every quarter, we get a fee from, our payment, excuse me, from them. In this particular division, the expenses will include the cell phone usage for all the staff. I am going to upgrade the cell phones from Androids to iPhones. The staff, the younger staff, they like their iPhones, and we do have some problems with the Android, so making the change. And that includes this, the $17,000 includes the monthly fee as well as the upgrade. In this division, I budget for some things for travel, meals, some budgeting $2,500. We also pay the Juvenile Justice Association fees. This is a membership to the Idaho Juvenile Justice Association membership that we all have. I sign all my probation officers. Right now, it's $30 per employee per year. They're eligible to apply for to attend the conference at no cost. In this division, I also budget for our newspaper. Employee appreciation is one of the most notable things that I make for the staff. It's budgeting $600 for that employee appreciation. It's the one-time event that we have in July. I'm budgeting $1,500 for supplies. And every year I purchase shirts with the Canyon County logo for all the staff. And this year again, I'm budgeting $2,500. Those shirts are typically given around the employee appreciation, so it's tied with the one-time celebration that we have for them. In this division, I'm also budgeting $11,000, $11,500 to be exact, to replace 8 laptop computers. This is upon the recommendation from the IT department. You know, we're on a cycle to replace equipment every 5 years, and every year we budget for this different staff. So this year it will be 8 laptop computers and 1 printer at the cost of about $11,000. Any questions? No? All right, then we'll move on to the cigarette. The Department of Juvenile Corrections is projecting to provide us $467,120 for this coming fiscal year. Again, we get this in payments 4 times a year. Every year for the last 7 years, if I could go back, we get an extra payment of the equal amount of every payment. So we end up getting a little over $500,000 every year from the Department of Juvenile Corrections to fund juvenile probation in this particular division. In this division, we also have 6 full-time employees that are being paid for. That included a project coordinator that I've had for the last 10 years. Since our project coordinator left, I am looking to upgrade or reclassify that position to a deputy director. The Juvenile Probation Department has not had a deputy director. I am looking to retire in a couple of years, and I'd like to make sure that the department is working well by the time I leave, and somebody that whoever may take over is fully in the know and the ins and outs of juvenile probation. I already have spoken to the controller about this position in anticipation of this budget presentation. I've already came up with a job description, and it's now being reviewed by the HR department and hopes to bring it to you for final approval sometime in the near future.
So that number is not in here, right?
The number is would be budgeted at the project coordinator's salary, which would be a different classification than what would be projected to start on October 1.
So no fiscal change?
I believe that there will be because, well, there will be. I'm not that I believe, there will be.
No, we just don't know that yet.
Correct.
Okay, Commissioner White?
Are you referring someone in-house or is this gonna go for outside?
My preference is to find the most qualified person, so it will be open to outside of the department as well.
Okay.
So, any other questions? In this division, I budget to pay for a lot of resources that are needed to help youth comply with conditions of probation. And these funds are paid for services that cannot be, or we can't find other sources of funding to pay for. In this case, urinalysis test. Our youth are ordered to produce a lot of urinalysis tests. A lot of them are eligible for Medicaid and or sub funding. There are funding that I don't budget here. But when those sources of funding are not available, we are mandated to do it by the court or asked to do the urinalysis. We do those in-house at the cost of whatever I'm being charged. And so I budget every year to pay for those UAs that are done in-house and that are not being paid by any other sources. Of course, we get reimbursement of those youth at the rate that we pay, and so that's what I count in the 300 division, as I said earlier.
Madam Chair. Elda, on your lines there, historically, for your actions on 21 and 22, you exceeded the budgeted amount.
I have so far this year, yes. I am receiving, I am paying for more of them, but I will be receiving more reimbursement from the youth. And we account that in the 300 division.
Okay.
So I'm not going to raise it because we're continuing to make sure that other sources of funding pay for this, so we don't have to budget for this. But
I appreciate that.
without having full control of when kids are ordered, I pay.
Well, I thank you for helping me put that together.
In this division, I'm also budgeting for psychosexual evaluations, family counseling, and electronic monitoring. All the amounts remain the same for the next fiscal year. I am raising the group counseling. There are several groups that do not exist in the community that are not paid by Medicaid or other sources of funding. And it's a specialized group that I'm looking to, that I do for kids. So I'm upgrading that, or raising the amount of money that we pay for that because of the specialized. It is strictly for juveniles in the system. I am reducing funding for sex offender treatment and counseling and mentors because we are finding ways to have other sources of funding pay for those. I still budget because there are those cases where no other funding will pay, and I want to make sure that I track all those expenses when we need to pay for it. I've raised the budget amount for gasoline and oil to $15,000. We have more SUVs this year than ever before, and with gas prices, I just got to be prudent to raise the amount, just $3,000 to $15,000. Restorative justice is another expense that I've increased from $5,000 to $10,000. Restorative justice covers many programs that are best practice to be utilized for youth, either first-time offenders or to divert them from the system. We have been doing restorative conferencing. We are now doing mediation for a lot of the kids who are getting into fights at school. And rather than to bring them into the system, we're trying to, and we've done mediation cases, which I have to pay the mediator to do those things. And that gives us a lot of actually savings. I can't tell you exactly how much, but when kids resolve the issues within the school system by having a trained mediator, they're not brought into the detention center, and we're not having probation officers assigned to our cases because we're having somebody else handle those cases to the satisfaction of the prosecuting attorney's office. In this division, I'm also budgeting $1,500 for office supplies. So between the two divisions, I'm budgeting a total of $3,000 for office supplies. And we seem to spend most of it every year. Auto repairs, this year, I'm reducing the amount, from 10,000 to 8,000. It seems like each year we're spending, around $5,000 for the repairs. It's really maintenance that we are, paying for, using the cigarette tax. Most of our cars are new. The fleet does an excellent job at helping us keep these cars well maintained and in good repair. So we are appreciative of that. The last item that I have budgeted in here is office furniture. We've had a conference room now for 12 years, and we've had the same chairs. And those chairs are used by staff, youth that come into our programs, and those chairs are very worn out. Some of them are broken, and it's time for me to replace them. We also have a lot of trainings in this room, where the staff sit for more than a couple of hours, and the chairs are not very comfortable. So I'm looking to to replace them. I believe that the court said that my money may not go that far when I go to them, because it is $5,000 to replace 30 chairs. So I'll see what I can do with that money. Any questions about the cigarette tax division? All right, then we will go on to the last one, the lottery. I'm always hoping that people can win the lottery so I can get more money. This year, so far, we've received $39,000. Last year, we received $79,000. I'm hoping that we reached our projected amount of $50,000. From this division, we pay one employee, one full-time employee. This is where I'm asking for $15,000 to fund a part-time position. More and more, our probation officers are asked to spend time with their kids out in the community and in the office doing urinalysis tests. And it's a balancing act. The kids that are coming into the system, haven't done this for so many years, are much harder than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They have complex issues. They have just a lot of issues that we have to take the time to identify what issues need to be addressed that are contributing to their involvement in the system. And I would like for those probation officers to not be tied down to doing community service, to doing UAs. Some kids take up to 2 hours to do a urinalysis test. In that probation, once they start, they can't leave that juvenile and they can't pass it on to somebody else. So they may take away because they're being nice or helping another probation officer can spend up to 2 hours doing a urinalysis test. I believe that a part-time position would help me. Really, it's $15,000. It's a lot of money. In the scheme of things, it's not a lot of money to save time on the probation officers so they can get on to doing their job. We also have, like I said, the GED program. I have to have somebody monitor that because we are dealing with juveniles that sometimes don't behave. And so I need to have somebody that can redirect or intervene when the youth are not behaving. Again, for me to have a probation officer, I think it's maybe not worth our money, and we should look at utilizing somebody that we could pay part-time to be able to help us carry out those duties. So that's my pitch for asking for the part-time position of funds. In the lottery division, budgeting for the miscellaneous professional.
I'm sorry, I do want to ask one question. So let's say that the lottery tax money doesn't come in, and then we have that position. So then is that covered by property tax or sales tax, or what would be the revenue source?
Well, I'm sure it would be likely property tax or another sales tax, another general source of county revenue.
What's the likelihood? And do we have, so even this year, if we end up below the 50,000, Do we have a balance that's being carried forward?
We currently do not have a balance going forward
Okay.
in lottery tax.
So any of this balance over what comes in from the lottery tax?
It's covered by the local revenue sources.
How come we put some of these positions in this section? Just so that it is covered by that? Or is it safer to just put the positions somewhere else?
We want to make sure we're using other folks' money first. So in order to make sure we're spending all of the state money, that's why we have a position here.
Okay.
And similar way we have positions in the Pearl Block and the cigarette tax. So we are spending every penny we get from the state every year. We're utilizing all of that money for juvenile justice.
So some of the opioid money, I'm sorry, Captain, on this all of a sudden. Some of the opioid money, like some of the things that they do, would that be another example of some of that money was allocated? It would have another page like this that would get budgeted for to take that money first?
Yeah, so that we could keep track of that specific money, that would be a possibility if those funds are eligible
Or
to
that type
assist
of-
here.
Okay. How often do you have counseling or work that's related to some type of drug opioid addiction?
Every day. The state provides this county up to $350,000 to pay for treatment of the youth. And that is state dollars that come that are not budgeted here. Our SUDS coordinator that I mentioned that we hire and oversee manages that. We don't get charged for any of that. The state pays for all that treatment. So every day there's treatment for youth, but the county is not paying for any of that treatment.
That's on the juvenile probation budget, the SUDS line for 50, well, that's like 50,000.
So that only pays for the contractor that manages the SUD program. The funds are with the Department of Juvenile Corrections. The position that we have hired will be monitoring that for the district. And every hour that the SUDS coordinator bills me for whatever she has spent, I then retrieve from the Department of Juvenile Corrections. So there is no county funds that are going to fund the coordinator or any other treatment.
When do we get the opioid money? We've talked, there's been information said that we might give it to Southwest District Health, but if we already have some programs that are dealing with it that might use property tax, why not at least keep some of it if she can identify?
The Madam Chair, the money is in process. They haven't given us a specific date. We've completed the necessary documentation paperwork. We're on the list to receive payment. We need to verify, make sure that there's some guidelines of how those funds may be spent. And if they could be spent here in Canyon County to help families, to help juveniles, that would be great. That's an eligible use of those monies.
Okay. I think we should talk about it. All right, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. A couple of other things that we, that I budget for in the lottery tax is a DocuSign, and we started doing that or using that a couple of years ago. The first year I paid a little over $5,000. Last year it came down to $3,200, and that is what it looks like to be the use that we're going to be using. So I'm only budgeting $3,200 for DocuSign.
Sorry, I have another question. If that's normally labeled as software, we don't normally call out like Adobe or Justware. Why did we do that here? And then it doesn't, like, where was it last charged? We're just now charging it to lottery tax?
So if I may ask, the line item where we first paid out of it was miscellaneous professional. That was where it was paid the first time in 2021.
Okay.
And again this year. So this year I have requested that we do a separate line, so it's very upfront on what we are budgeting for, and it's not lumped into professional services. I am budgeting for miscellaneous professionals, but that is to pay for pre-employment drug test and any drug test of the staff.
What was your $30,000 software expense this fiscal year?
That was for our case management system, our database that we've been using for 20 some years, not 30 years, 20 some years. And they went to a cloud-based program, and so they needed to do some upgrades to the format that they introduced to us, and they've done that this year. So
So that was a one-time cost?
that was a one-time cost. We do have an $8,000 support, same company, to help us support the case management system. And that's budgeted in the 300 division.
It's weird to me that it has its own title.
DocuSign.
Yeah, it's software.
Elder requested a unique line there so she could track that.
Okay.
It's a
weird.
membership, but we can certainly, put it in software. I'm not married to that.
If everyone called and said, I want a line item for Adobe, or I want a line item for, it's just, I don't know. Maybe we'll tell everyone it was different for Elda because it was for lottery. I'll let you guys do that. It doesn't really make a difference, but. Okay,
Moving on to training in the lottery. This is the division where I budget for our training, radio equipment. And when I say training, if I send somebody out to a national training, I pay for hotel, airfare, and such things. I do a lot of in-house training. We have a training coordinator. So we do bring folks in here to our office to do training to maximize the dollars that we have. Didn't realize how expensive things are getting. I am sending one of the probation officers to the professional drug court training that is being held in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're up to, I think, $3,800 with airfare, registration, and hotel, which would really wipe my $5,000 budget that I have if I don't find other sources of funding to pay for training. But I'm going to stay with what I have. I think it's reasonable to do, and the Department of Juvenile Corrections is very gracious and always makes things available to us, and we do access funding from them to pay for some training at different times of the year. So I think that is sufficient. One of the new expenses that is listed in this division is ARCON, and that's what it's labeled. ARCON is the new self-defense approach that the Post Academy is taking for juvenile probation and juvenile detention. It will be a new training. It will be different than what we currently have. We have AUF right now. So next year it will be ARCON. We are not paying for a trainer because Sean Anderson is our master trainer. What we are budgeting here for is for supplies. Sean will need a lot of supplies to help train our staff. Supplies will be mouth guards because they will be doing some the moves and that will require that, some shields, some mats, and so those are the kinds of things that we would be purchasing with these funds. The last thing that I have is vehicles. Juvenile probation has 11 cars, one van. In fiscal year 2022, we budgeted to replace 2 cars and 1 van. We replaced the cars with new SUVs. They're great, but our van may not be here by the end of our fiscal year. So Mark suggested that I budget again for next fiscal year to make sure that we still have the funds available for that van. This year we are looking again to replace one of our oldest 2015 SUVs, and one of our Ford Fusions in addition to the van, to the tune of $100,000. Questions?
Madam Chair. Elda, I want to go back to your budget, your request for chairs. It sounds like a lot, because you indicated 5,000, but out there, the chairs, that's $166 a chair. So you found something that will work at that price point?
I hope that I can. I've looked at different catalogs, and I think that I can find something that is reasonable. Again, the ones we've had them for 10 years, 12 years actually. So I think that we can do an upgrade with this particular honor.
Thank you.
I want to go back to something that I actually overlooked, if I may, in the cigarette tax. After the program expenses, right below, I budget for different fundings that I give other people. I have been traditionally giving the juvenile drug court program $5,000 to use for expenses that they have for. I'm not really sure exactly what they spend it on, but I have supported the juvenile drug court program by providing them $5,000. I've also budgeted to support the juvenile detention center, and I typically have given them $5,000 every year for the last at least 5 years. It used to be more when we would get more money, but we've gone to $5,000. This year, when I met with Sean, he asked if I would budget to provide him $15,000. They have several repairs that they need to make in the juvenile detention center. And because this is that's an expense that's acceptable to be used under this funding, I am budgeting the $15,000 for Sean to make the repairs that he needs in the juvenile detention center.
Madam Chair. And the juvenile drug court, is that different than the youth court?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Thank you.
if you never have any questions for you, well done.
Thanks, Elda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we are gonna roll right into misdemeanor probation department. Actually, Elda, I'm just gonna ask you, you have a, well, no, the juvenile, no, I don't, it's for Sean. Good afternoon, Mr. Breach.
Okay, ready for me?
Yep.
Okay, well, I figured I would start with a couple of department trends because that'll kind of relate into the revenue forecasting. So overall, probation and community service numbers are down. So if we look at May of this year, on the probation side, we had 937 active cases. Compared to May of 2021, we had 1,022. And if we look at the community service side, in May of 2022, we had 209 cases in community service, and last year in 21, at the same time, we had 336. So we've had a workload decrease in our department. So that's going to change. I probably help understand why I've changed kind of my educated guessing and revenue forecasting for us. So for cost of supervision revenue for FY23, I'm projecting $420,000. Even though if we look at the FY21 actual, which is our last complete year, we had over $468,000 of revenue collected on that. So that's why I decreased that. And I did the same thing with the workers' comp fee that the community service workers pay. I'm gonna forecast $14,902, even though the FY21 actual was over 18,000. Just because we've seen a kind of a decrease in those numbers. I don't really know if that trend is gonna continue, if it's gonna level, or if it's gonna go back up. So for my A budget, I've got 13 full-time positions. I'm not requesting anything new, just continuing to fund what we have. I do have a couple of upgrades I'd like to do. We have currently one senior probation officer position that's a stipend position. I would like to add a second senior probation officer position. And I would also like to increase the overall stipend for those positions to $2,000 a year to do those duties. We're looking to build some depth in our leadership. We're looking to expand a little bit of coverage and give people a little bit more of a career path to prepare them. And I think that's a really good way to do that. And we'll be looking to expand kind of some of their duties. Like, for example, tomorrow afternoon and then all day Friday, I'll be at the Domestic Violence Court Conference. So our assistant director is on vacation. So the senior probation officer that we have will basically run the department for a day and a half. So it's not stuff that they're doing like perpetually, but it's times where they're going to have to fill in and kind of do those kind of duties. So that's why we want to do that. I'm also wanting to upgrade our customer service specialist to an administrative specialist. We're in the process of doing that right now. We've got the job description done, have a meeting scheduled with Zach to work on getting a pay scale. And that's just to help make that position a little bit more competitive, especially when we have to fill it. I know you've already, in prior months, you've heard my drama of trying to fill the position. And so we're looking at trying to make that more effective. I didn't put anything in there for a COLA or anything like that. I hope we have one. I think probably, I guess one thing I would throw out is like when I'm trying to recruit a probation officer, my main competition is the Department of Correction. They have raised their salaries substantially. A probation officer for IDOT starts at almost $47,000 a year now. That's up where our midline is. And their correctional officers are starting at $42,000 a year. So that's really going to try and change when we're trying to recruit people. That's who we're competing with. So I'm hopeful we'll have something like that. Any questions on my A budget before I move on to the B? Okay. My B budget is awfully boring. The most exciting thing I have in my B budget is I have in the computer line, which is 577,100. It's time to replace computer equipment. It sounds like that's a trend this year. So I have $17,887 in there to replace 13 desktops, 1 laptop, and 1 printer copier. Everything else in the B budget is just kind of, it's just kind of status quo. We're not really doing any big projects this year. We did a lot of the soft body armor last year. And we've got a little bit of money budgeted in there just for continuing on of like, we have 1 vacant position right now that very well may not get filled until closer to the new budget year when we're getting that on board. Or we may have somebody leave with what the person that was wearing doesn't fit anymore. We're not doing any more radio purchases. We're not doing any more camera projects because it's still up in the air with office space. So we're not doing any more projects with like the building. So yeah, the B budget's awfully boring. Do you have any questions on the B budget?
Commissioner White.
I'm going to go back, Jeff, to the senior probation officer. So this is, you have one, and this will be the second one, and it will be a promotion, but you said you wanted to do a $2,000 stipend?
Yes, right now the stipend for senior probation officers is $1,000.
Okay,
So I'm wanting to raise that to 2,000. So I already put in like, one of the line is there has like 3,000 in it for position upgrades. So yeah, it would raise the person who's currently in it up another $1,000, and the new person who I would like to get going in the new budget year would put them at the $2,000 stipend to do it. And it would also give us coverage on both sides of the week because of the way we kind of break up people's work schedule. We have probation officers that work Monday through Thursday, and we have probation officers who work Tuesday through Friday.
so Madam Chair, so explain to me why you just don't raise the salary. Is this more like a word, it's just more bonus than the regular their salary would go up.
Commission-wide, we're trying to not create too many job descriptions. So we have one job description with one pay range. And then out of those listing of positions, right now, one of them is identified as a lead. And there's an additional $1,000 added onto the salary. In order to maintain a reasonable list of job descriptions, that's why we've taken this approach.
Okay, so, just for the record sake, do we do that kind of across the board?
We do that across the board. For example, an entity that has customer service positions, there'll be a certain number of those positions flagged as lead, and they get the stipend. Instead of creating 900 different job descriptions, we've taken this approach. We have one job description that's consistent with a consistent pay range, and then a certain number of those positions are identified as lead.
Thank you for putting that on. Thanks, Jenna.
That's an example of a risk assessment tool.
Oh, that is the LSIR, so level of service inventory revised. So we do that on everybody that comes into probation. It determines their risk level, so if they're high risk, moderate risk, or low risk. And that determines the frequency of their contacts with the probation officer. So we do that when they initially come in. Then if there's any significant change in like their behavior or their circumstances, we do that again. And we also do that when somebody is, maybe they've hit their halfway point, they've done half of their probation, or they've done a really good probation. We do another one to see what their risk level changes to, because maybe they started off kind of as a high moderate, but they've done a lot of things, they changed those dynamic factors, because there's certain risk factors that are static that are never really going to change. Like if I've had 5 prior convictions, I can't get rid of those 5 prior convictions. But if I have a substance abuse problem, I can change that. That's a dynamic risk factor that I can change. So we're assessing those, and so if that's reduced, and then that helps guide us if we're going to put them in for unsupervised probation.
Awesome.
And I can always count on the price of that going up every January. Like I'm at the point now, probably this January, because I've always ordered the same amount at a time. In January, I'm pretty sure that I will be coming over here with a purchase order for you guys to sign, for me to order the same amount that I ordered every time year after year.
All right, any other questions?
I have an administrative question for Zach. So Zach, I appreciate you printing the budget and the notes. I'm in Power Plan looking, are the notes also in there and I'm just missing them?
Oh, I can answer that. So there's 2 divisions. So when I started this, I put the notes under each division. So if you have to select the probation division and you'll see like notes. And then you could select the community service where you see notes. But we made the decision that we're doing away with these 2 divisions. So it's all just going to be meshed into one, but unfortunately that's not what I told you.
Okay, so they're not in the 11642.
Yeah, you have to, if you click on that says 11642 misdemeanor probation, it's going to give you like a drop down. So you'll see organizational structure and then you'll see a little plus sign with misdemeanor probation. If you click on that, you're going to get 2 more little drop downs, one that says misdemeanor probation and one community service. So if you click on misdemeanor probation, it'll take you into that one specifically.
Okay.
And that's when you'll be able to find the notes under that division and vice versa.
I see.
We made this decision too late before the notes.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
Okay, thank you. And jump right into juvenile detention. Mr. Brown.
How are you?
Get my quota for sitting.
Yes.
Thank you. You're up.
Good afternoon. I will go over my budget. I've got the A budget, B budget. It's pretty simple, but there are some changes that I've kind of made this time. And so I'll hit those changes as we go through them. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I might not hit, I did put a bunch of notes in there, so they should all be in there, so if you do have questions. just let me know. I'm gonna jump down, so the A budget, I'm gonna go to our overtime. So for this one, for overtime, because we're a 24/7, anything extra that we do has to be budgeted in. And training, we have to have 28 hours a year to keep our certificate. And so I budgeted that in, and when I come down with all the numbers, it comes out to be $25,000. And so that covers just the training that has to be done. You'll see that I put in there 35,000. This time I am adding 10,000 to cover anything where my staff have to cover for other staff that might be sick. So there's certain numbers that we have to kind of go by depending on kids and how many staff we have there. And if too many are gone, we have to pull other staff to come in. We try to do that with part-time, but we can't always do it with part-time. So there are times that I have to pull in my regular staff to that. And then, as you know, this year, we had to do that mandatory overtime. So that's what that one's for. The holiday pay is really the same thing. Because we are 24/7, it has to come out somewhere. And so with the numbers that I have I have to figure out how many staff I have and kind of what the price is per day. And so holiday pay is moving up to $72,800 just to cover the holidays. Part-time, I'm want to move that up 5,000. Halfway through, we're at 57%. So I'm adding 5,000 in there to move it up from 25,000 to 30,000 to cover our part-time.
Madam Chair? On that part-time, how do you feel about the rate, the hourly rate? Are we in the ballpark now? Do you feel like, or what we're paying per hour for part-time?
Okay, so part-time, I moved them up last year, and it's great. I don't have a reason to change it, and it's doing well. So, yeah.
Good to know, thank you.
Yes. I will be asking for one position this year, a senior admin specialist position. We've had this position for many years, the last 2 years. It was unfunded a couple of years ago. Sean and I have tried to absorb this position, and we cannot absorb this position. It is very much needed. And so I am asking that we have that position back to be funded.
That's the 63,000. That includes benefits.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the A budget. Any questions? Okay, I'll get our B.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Wonderful.
You had a position that's been open for the longest in the board.
Okay.
My question about it is, it's a senior detention. Juvenile detention officer since 2017. You had one open that long?
Madam Chair, my guess would be that
The
position
rebuild,
was unfunded.
and then, so it's the same thing as one of those other ones.
And now earlier this fiscal year, we added back in 4.
Yep.
Yes,
So it's probably one of those.
So do you still have one open?
3.
Still have 3 open. So that is what it is. Okay. Thank you.
For the B budget, the miscellaneous profession service, so that one's going up. The main reason for that is we are due for a PREA audit. Every 3 years, we have to have a PREA audit. The PREA audit, I've asked around, it's going approximately $10,000 to have that done. So I'm asking for $10,000 to be put in there for our PREA audit, which has to be done in this fiscal year. Radio equipment. I'm going up a little bit in the radio equipment. The radios that we have now, they work. They're good, but they just don't last. If you drop them, they break and things like that. So I'm looking for radios that are gonna be better for us, more durable. And so I'm looking to get 15 radios. They're about $300 each. And especially in our line of work, you need your radio to work. So I am asking to have that done. In the cigarette tax, Elda was kind enough to give me $15,000 in this one. This will cover, I have painting that needs to be done. I have sinks, cabinets, things like that that need to be redone. I also need to order some training equipment out of that.
Where's that at?
That is
Second page. 540.
548465.
So that's just an expense, but at the top, there's no income for it. So that'll come in through Elda, but paid through here.
And we will add
We will,
15,000 in revenue.
to this top line.
That top line, yes.
Okay.
And yes, from juvenile justice money from Elda.
Okay. Thank you.
The next one is our food. So we will be going up approximately 55% in food. There is a reason behind this.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, for Summit,
Yes,
55%,
yes.
you're gonna get an extra cracker.
So what has happened is they have not increased us as they have with the jail over the last 6 years. And so we've been pretty cheap. So we've been paying $1.68 for all that time. So they found that, and so they're now moving us up.
So they did an audit and
They,
something you
yeah.
never got.
Right. And so they're moving us up, which is, it's going to $2. It's going from $1.63 per meal to $2.39 per meal. And then our snacks are going from 68 cents to $1.68.
Do they pay for the snacks or do we pay for them?
We pay $1.68 for each snack that we get.
Or you will pay?
Yes. Right now I'm paying 68 cents.
Yeah, so beginning October 1st, do we have to provide snacks?
We don't have to, but if we want, I suggest that we do provide snacks, especially for these kids that are growing and they get hungry.
But a snack is almost as much as a meal. Why don't we just provide them another meal? I mean, really though.
It's well worth it just for the attitude.
Yes.
What kind of snack is it?
So
So we get a sandwich and an apple.
That's the snack. So they get 3 meals plus a 4th one, which is a sandwich and a,
Apple and
So we give them the apple between breakfast and lunch, and then we give them the sandwich in the evening. And it keeps their hunger, and they are more satisfied, and in that way, we deal with less issues. So,
plus popcorn.
and we've got our behavior, yes, that one does great, yes.
did you ask them why a sandwich and an apple costs almost as much as a meal?
I did not.
Will you?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
it is a meal though. I mean, that's what was in my lunch pail today, was a sandwich and an apple. So, I mean, it is a meal.
The other place that they're doing this is up in Coeur d'Alene, and they are paying the same price as we are. And if I was to go out and try to get this stuff,
Oh, I couldn't make it for that much.
yeah, it's still a great deal. Plus, we are being, we get a certain, because we are on the school lunch program, we do get reimbursed for most of it, so it is still a benefit for us.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner White?
while we're talking about this, is there a certain minimum calories are there that they're supposed to have?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bambi.
and for the record, I am in favor of putting the snacks in place. I do think that is a reward that people inherently like. So the cost, as you've articulated, we can't go out and do that. So I'm just in favor of putting it in place.
It's not a reward though, right? Everyone gets it.
Everyone does get it.
It's T-ball.
It's really to help them out. I mean, they're hungry.
Yeah.
I'll be straight up, they are hungry, even the meals,
Yeah.
they're still hungry. So, and I can go back as a teenager myself and.
I was abused as a child. I could not eat between meals. My mother, you don't, so that, life has
That
become
explains
clear
a lot.
to me. Yeah, it explains a lot.
Okay, sorry.
Do I put snacks in the commissioner's budget?
Yes. If I know.
It's too late.
You can pay more than $1.68 for a snack.
Yeah, we would.
Well, he can just add it, you know.
Okay.
I could add more.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Moving on.
Yep.
All right, computer equipment. So this year we have increased, so that what we got from IT to replace some of our stuff is 10,095. And then I leave another 5,000 in there because we have cameras, we have monitors, and if anything else goes down, we need to be able to repair those, replace those. So I leave the other 5,000 in there. So that one is up at 15,000.
I feel like Greg Brass that's in the audience. You're replacing everyone's computers this year.
I'll explain that next. The last two items, so that's pretty much the BI, but I do have two things that I would like to do for the facility that I'm asking for, and one of them is for a gym floor. The floor that we have in there right now is really just tile on concrete. Some of the problems, it's been there for 30 plus years, and it does okay, but there are some security issues that I have with it and things like that. If any of it cracks or comes up and the kids get a hold of it, there's a lot of damage that can be done with those. It is pretty hard. It becomes very slick, especially with the shoes that they have. And the painted lines that are in my gym are there for security reasons, and they wear out very quickly. And even when they come over when maintenance comes over to buff it and do those kind of things, it goes away, and so we have to repaint all the time. So I'm asking for a new floor in there. The new floor would be, it's like a hard rubber flooring. So I got with facilities director, Rick Britton, and what we did was we kind of looked at a lot of things. We had a floor person come in, and so the rubber floor would be less maintenance. The painted lines, they would last much longer. I talked to them about that, and they said the lines will last for quite a while. They won't slip as much, and it is a little more forgiving. So if somebody hits the floor, it's not going to hurt them as bad as it would if they hit the concrete floor. And it takes away all of my security issues with the tile floor. So overall, it would be much better. And the approximate cost for that, I think it was $26,600 is what the approximate cost was for that.
How old's your building?
Oh, 93 is when it was built.
Where were the kids before that?
I'm sorry,
Where were the kids kept before that?
the same building.
So it was built in 93 or it was built before?
93 is when kids started coming in.
They were sent to Ada County.
So originally we didn't have detention, we used Ada. Okay. So 93 is when we got them.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the last item I have is my showers. I have 6 showers on the bottom floor. They all need to be redone. There are some cracks that are starting to come up. So this building is the newer building, which was in 2000. So the showers haven't been touched for 22 years. And it's starting to show, and the showers really need to be redone. And we had a contractor come in and kind of give us what needs to be done. But one of the things that's happening is we're just getting cracks up from the bottom. If the cracks come through all the way, then you have to pretty much replace the whole thing. So we want to prevent that from happening. And we need to put a new layer on the showers. And that will cost about $5,000 a shower. And so that will be $30,000 to take care of all that.
All right, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one last thing, your striping is a very minimal amount, like $600.
I'm sorry. I didn't
The
hear.
striping on that is a minimal cost. You didn't put a cost, but just a map, it's a minimal cost for the striping on your floor
So it's included in the total price?
with the gym replacement.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies, do you want a quick break before we roll into IT, or are you good? I'm good. All right, Mr. Rast, I should have asked you gentlemen, would you like a break or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Different or the same way we do?
What's the same? Just one correction.
Let's see. You're up. How are you?
What's that?
You good?
I'm good. So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, thanks for having me. Well, Madam Chair, you looked at me about all computer replacements. I'll answer that question first.
Okay.
Well, this is the side effect of hiring me in 2015. In 2016, we started the equipment cycle process. That's why you're seeing a lot of them hit between FY22 and 23, and the sum was last year, 21. So we did phase them over 2 fiscal years. So there's your answer on that.
All right.
So you see a lot of them hit this year, especially in the PA's office.
Well, you talked the PA into losing the Chromebooks.
Well, hopefully I didn't talk them into it, I just partnered with them so they understood the security side.
I'm sure that's what it was. Yeah. Awesome.
Full support. All right, well, I'll start with conceptually because it's going to be a busy year, just like every year within IT. We've got about 6 different focuses we're going to be working on in FY23. And I provided you a presentation to go through the budget that kind of highlights the significant changes and the stuff that we're doing and the costs associated with that. But the significant focus is around the expo fair, the infrastructure. We're going to making sure that's all done correctly, get that up to speed. We have the Office 365 that we're investigating on that because we've got to renegotiate our Microsoft contract next summer. So we're looking at the Office 365 to kind of do a cloud hybrid approach. I don't know what that looks like yet, but there's some benefits by going partial cloud. But that'll be soon to be coming. That's going to be a huge effort. There's some consultation costs against that. We've got software development, pretty high on the aid budget side. We have 9 top critical software applications that we're actually developing. I can name those if you're interested. Otherwise, we can talk about those later, but they're 9 major significant development projects. We have our GIS infrastructure. We're going to be actually enhancing that, upgrading it, replacing some hardware on that. And the Skype replacement. Now that's the biggest one. That's our telephone system. When I started, we had 3. We had Nortel, Avaya, and Skype. We have to abandon Skype, and I have to say that Skype is the last technology I inherited when I started, and I'd love to take it out of the, take on the roadway and run it over. I do not like that solution. So we're going to backhaul the Avaya solution back into the county. So we have one solution. And we've got to do that by next summer because Microsoft is abandoning that product. Regardless, I would have still jumped ship. So we'll talk about that here shortly with the costs associated. Okay. I will start with the A budget. I am not asking for any new bodies on the A budget. Initially, I was going to actually ask for a new receptionist or a backup receptionist for the switchboard reception for phone calls, because we take all the phone calls coming to the courthouse around appropriately. The majority of our calls are for the clerk's office. So working with the clerk, and we're actually going to bring in an attendant. So we call the courthouse, we have some options. Right now, we're doing the test bed, and so far it's working. So that kind of bases the reason to have another body sitting there. But there's options for the court assistants, elections, recording, passports, and then we have the operator. So there's 4 options. We did that last week, and on average, about 30 calls hit the operator in a day. So I think it's going to work by doing this. So that's why I'm not asking for another position. So when this individual is on vacation, sick, on breaks, we'll kick this attendant on and use it as a backup, and also use it on the holidays. So there's that. So on the A side, no new bodies. We have 36 FTEs right now. If you go down on 413075, that's the compensation program. That's the number I come up with based on the STEP program and the compensation spreadsheet that I have on all my positions. That does not include a COLA. That's just the next step. Then I got on call, which is $19,050 on line 412035. That is on call pay for 6 individuals on rotation. 4 desktop, a system administrator, and a network architect. That way if it needs to escalate up. And that's 24/7 on call if needed. So that's that. Holistically, my budget is actually up 5%. So it's, with last year that was approved and amended, it was $5,009,151. I'm requesting $5,265,827. If you look down below, the A budget actually decreased $46,569, but the B budget is actually up, so it's a B heavy year at $303,245, with the difference of $256,676 positive. That's what I'm asking how can be on. And they're on page 1. I did some highlighted expenditures. Well, actually, before I move on, any questions on the A budget?
Did I miss, how did your budget go down? What got lost?
Actually, I'd have to refer to the controller on the calculations because I use those numbers. But I will tell you to point out one thing. If you look at the requested FY22 and approved, you notice it went down $5,000. I took a few merit increases away from a few employees that weren't performing based on performance evaluations. But in the requested FY23, I have to refer to the controller.
Partly what Greg mentioned there. Also, there are 2,080 payable hours in 23. There were 2,088 payable hours in the current fiscal year. So there's less number of compensable hours in fiscal year 2023.
When that happens to a salaried person, their salary doesn't change, right?
But it does affect, it will affect, from a budget standpoint, yes, it does affect salary people and hourly people.
Hourly, I get it, because they're paid hourly, but salary, we agreed to an annual rate. So shouldn't it just stay the same?
It stays the same, but the allocation between fiscal years, so for example, the final paycheck that overlaps fiscal years will allocate a percentage of that between both fiscal years. But in 2023, there's no overlap. It's exactly 2080. 2022 was 2088.
Okay,
Sorry for such a technical
I asked for it.
explanation, but there's a different amount of hours, a lesser amount of hours in 2023.
Okay,
Well, I learned something new today. So thank you for that. So there you go. There's the reason. Help me out, reduce my budget anyways. I really appreciate that.
next year's commissioners are gonna be like, why are you increasing it?
Sometimes there's 2096, depending on the days.
All right, so on to the B side, the significant expenditures that we have in the lower right hand corner of page 1, which you're gonna break into some of this, is again, the GIS server hardware. Our GIS has actually blossomed. We're using a lot more now. We've got it split between DSD, the assessor, basically IT services and DSD. IT services, elections, meeting passes, facilities, and whatnot in those services. So we have to expand that because we're kind of resource starving the infrastructure, and these servers are running on 6 years. So it's time to swap them out. And we are going to use the hardware we swap out for other things within the county. So it's definitely not a throwaway situation. So that's an upgrade. The camera surveillance expansion. In Director Britton's budget, he's added about 8 cameras for expansion for blind spots around the campus, as well as a fleet. They're on the old camera system. This is the server and the storage for those cameras. I've been working with the emergency manager, Christine Wendelsdorf, around the active shooter situation, around cameras. And if we can actually set up the camera system appropriately, it might qualify for emergency management funds to cover that, as well as maybe the cameras that are in Director Britton's budget. So just be aware of that. It's in my budget for now. The VMware licenses, that's just expansion of the data center to cover the hardware that we buy, and that's just software to run the situation in the data center. If you want to store a file on the network, I got to license it. So that's what that's about. I am budgeting for a truckload of county paper. Paper's up. I had to buy half a truckload. It was unbudgeted, as the board knows. But I am adding this into this fiscal year. That way we're covered if we need it. And so that's what that, and the paper is going up. We're seeing a pretty significant truckload of paper. It used to be 17,000, now it's almost 25. There it is, the cost is going up. So we're doing everything we can to get paperless as much as we can. The Skype replacement, the price tag on that one is $335,500. I do have a page that breaks those prices down into the appropriate ledger in the chart of account. And then just a natural growth of licensing. I'm seeing a major increase of software costs. I'm seeing an increase on computer costs because the demand is higher. We're getting about 6 weeks to get a computer at your doorstep, and a server is about 3 months, and the price is up at least 10%. So I have to account for at least 5% increase because there's some services we're taking away, and then the inflation of those costs. But we are not budgeting anything for this year for storage for county, because we're on year 5 of 8 of storage growth, and there's no money allocated this year for storage in my plan. It's not in here. So we're sitting pretty good on that growth projections, because we're growing about 53 terabytes of data a year. Just to give you an idea, that's a lot of data every year.
And Jen, Greg, would you say that again on how long it's taking you to get a server? Did you say 6 months or 3 months?
It's 3 months for servers right now.
Thank you. 6 weeks for the computers. Thanks.
And then no more vehicles we haven't replaced last year. We're sitting good on there. And then no more services, which means internet. Anything else, I have good news on that, hot off the press, but we'll talk about that in a minute. If you'll turn to page 2, that's my org chart. I currently have 3 vacancies. I say 3 because I truly have 1 vacancy, 1 desktop. I'll be going out to market in the next 30 days to replace. And then unfortunately, Anita from Print Shop announced she's retiring. Great for her, terrible for us. So in July, we need to backfill her, but we're going to hopefully do that sooner. So there's some cross training there. I am happy for her. But we do have 3 vacancies, which equates to about 10% of the staff.
I don't know if you know this, but my degree is in graphic design and printing technology.
You're
I'm
hired.
gonna need a job in January.
You're hired. Okay, and then page 3, that's kind of the history since I've taken over in 2015, the growth of IT. When I started, there was 25 PCNs, 24 filled, 1 funded vacant. Now we're at 36. And you can kind of see where we kind of stalled out and held for 3 or 4 years. And this fiscal year, current one, FY22, the board helped me taking the lead admin to a system administrator position, helped tremendously with that. And it wasn't a new body, but there was some differential in pay that was covered on my vacancy savings. So I appreciate that. All right, page 4. As you can tell, we're not really a revenue center. IT is an overhead. We all know that. But we do have a little bit of revenue coming in. We project 13,000 this next coming fiscal year. The current one, we had 23,000 because we had some costs coming from the Mosquito Abatement District and 3rd District Court Services on the website. They paid a $5,000 each upfront cost to create those websites and hosting fees. And that's why it's actually down $10,000 from FY22 to 23. And I do recall this morning the TCA, they pay $2,400 a year for IT services to host that equipment and their website and design and all of that. And for this upcoming, as you'll see, we have web services for family court services, mosquito abatement, 3rd District Court. And then we have hourly services if needed for the animal shelter, ambulance district, and also the mosquito abatement. We have copier machine, and our copier machines are used less and less. But there is a little bit of revenue comes back, and that's for general use for attorneys, of course. Any questions about revenue? And that was a whopper. The next one on page 5, that's the Skype replacement project. If you go down, what I did is I broke out all the costs that come up with that $335,492 in the individual line items. We've been working on this, and we have a project plan for almost a year. So these are pretty much hard costs we have in the scope of work. So that's how I came up with these costs. So there is backing on all of that. And the project, we've got to kick it off on October 1, if this budget is approved for this cost, to be done by June of 2023. We are going to start replacement in the court side, because I think in room 201, they really need the new system in there for VIA, just for, I think, a dependability factor. Elections, mostly will probably focus on the clerk's office on that. Any questions on that Skype replacement? On page 6, that's actually a snapshot of all the chart of accounts in my fee budget, coming to $1,825,000. And I've actually broke these down in 3 sections. And then we'll talk about the talking points of the major change. The top section on page 7, that is the software renewal. I said that software is going up at $67,000. I budgeted $708,000 in FY22. I project the actual spend will be $729,000. It'll be over because everything's going up. So I worked on that, and I think we're going to be about $775,000 with Microsoft renewal and some other, because we deal with 44 vendors. We have annual, biannual, triennial agreements that we digger all the time on these things. As you can tell, there's a lot of vendors and a lot of products that could fluctuate that cost.
Thank you. Mr. Maybe, Greg, before we get too much farther down the road, I just had a question on your Avaya subscription and phone replacement. They just assume that you were going to move to something different besides that as a stopgap to get rid of Skype or not?
Absolutely, like we're getting rid of it. And the Avaya was our choice since we're running 80-20. 20% of accounts are already running Avaya, and it's on subscription.
And you like them and you want to keep them? That's my question.
Yes, absolutely. They've been one of the pioneers in the market.
Okay.
Them and Cisco are probably the 2 biggest ones out there. And they work good in the jail. So Avaya right now is animal shelter, the jail, I believe fairgrounds, and a few other locations I can't think of, but it's about 20% account now.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, given the cost that you're dedicating to that, that's your vendor of choice going toward the future. Thanks.
It is. So that's really the software increase. Again, there's a lot of moving parts around contracts and these costs. I'm actually having my development team write a custom application to help track these renewals. So now when they come up, how much to try to negotiate those prices down to track them even better. Because you should see my spreadsheet. It's ridiculous. So I need almost an application to track all this stuff. And you can see on page 8 and 9, it's very small. You might need a magnifying glass. These are what's coming due this next fiscal year on these contracts. If you add them up, there's not 44 because some aren't coming up for due. So it kind of gives you an idea. If you want to read through that, it may not make any sense, but that's what we've done.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
and what's the staff time that's dedicated to tracking your licensure and all this renewal information on your contracts?
Primarily, it's me and my business manager, Gail Penwell. I spend probably, I would say 10% of my time just reviewing contracts and make sure we get the best deal. She tells me when they come due and then I start working on them.
Thank you.
All right, page 10, the internet. That's what I want to talk about. This is kind of good news, kind of hot off the press. If you look, I've got $115,000 in 542205, that line item. The box in the notes, it kind of breaks down into 3 different pots of money here. In that line item is we have internet service coming to the courthouse. That's our main link. And if you look, currently we spend $8,350 a month for that. And that's enterprise class. You can't compare this to home network. And so there is that. Then we have our link at the East Complex for another data center off another carrier. And that's through Syringa for disaster recovery. We're negotiating our contracts, as I just mentioned. And I think we can save about $31,000 by 23. Because we can drop that $8,350 down by going to a 3-year renewal contract again to save that kind of money. So I'd like to keep that at 115 because we haven't signed an agreement or anything. But I do believe if it goes forward, I have a call with Lumen CenturyLink on Thursday for this deal. And if that's the case, we could save roughly 31 grand. So I'm pretty happy about that one. And also part of that savings too is we work with the city of Nampa. We had a connection, we got a courthouse in Nampa, and they use it for spilling for dispatch to dispatch. And we use Lumen for that connectivity. Well, we worked with them in an MOU, if you remember, that the city of Nampa jumped on our fiber on I-84 between Garrity into our courthouse to create their connection. We were able to cancel that service through Lumen, which is part of that savings, a little bit of it. But now we own the fiber, we have the connections. We fired it up, I think, last Wednesday. It's running faster and better than we own it. So no more service reliability on that. So we're constantly negotiating that as well. There is another point of interest in there is I put $3,000 working with Director Swing at Celebration Park. I call it the ends of the earth. Every service stops, I think, a mile before Celebration Park. We're using every piece of copper we have through CenturyLink Lumen to get the Century or Celebration Park for their internet and phone service back to us. Well, what's happening is it's pretty limited bandwidth. And when she has students out there using the dormitory or the museum is having an event, they're on the internet, on the guest wireless, and it saturates and their phone calls start dropping. In the private side, their connection back to us is suffering. So what I like to do is bring in satellite internet. And I talked to the controller and clerk about this. I think it's a pretty good idea to put satellite internet over there, separate it. So if there's any guests that come in, either the camp host, students, they can use that and just have a full access. And it would qualify, again, I'll let the controller determine this, but it would qualify for ARPA because it's citizen access. We just open it up. So if someone wants to cruise Netflix for 3 hours, I guess that's what they do. And that's we're told that we're differently. So there's that $3,000 in that as well. So there's maybe a little more cost savings in that line. Any questions on that? Education and training. I've got $59,000 earmarked for education training for IT. This breaks it down for self-paced training for all of IT as well as the individuals and what trainings I want them to go to. And then all the travel associated with it is in the chart accounts as well for airfare, hotel, if applicable. And that'll tell you exactly where I want to allocate the money. But I will tell you, historically speaking, you don't spend all of this. Because when you plan for a year of trainings, life sometimes gets in the way. Sometimes I have staff that didn't have time for it. It either goes from on-site to virtual. There's a lot of moving pieces. You're trying to do training in the technical world for a year. And I think this year we'll probably spend 50% of that $60,000 that we put in there. I just want to throw that out there.
Madam Chair. Greg, can you detail how you budget for those trainings and the expenses on that? We have people that want to provide training, but they don't necessarily provide this level of detail. So how do you cost account for the inflation?
Well, actually, my process is, Commissioner Benedict, is my development manager, operations manager, business manager gives me their requests for their staff. They're responsible for going out and getting the costs associated for that individual to get to me. So that, and I evaluate those costs and I break it down per person. And if you look, I break it down by percentage, by project management, operations, development, IT. I break that down. And now the travel expense is the tough one. You can't really go out and get an airfare quote for something that could be beyond 6 or 7 months. So what I do, if you look, I do have an average. You see the gray columns? I run averages from FY12 to the latest full year FY21, and I run an average of cost for airfare, hotel, meals, anything associated, taxi, anything like that. And so I put the averages in there. If you look, for example, I guess we can just take airfare. Go back to page 6 and look at 545507, that's airfare. If you look at the $2,500 in there, if you go 2 columns over in the gray, that's FY12 through FY21, the actual cost was $2,444. So I work on averages based on long-term budget fiscal.
Nice, thank you.
Any question about education and training?
Just to say that back, you get hard costs for attending that, whatever it is, and everything else is subject to your averages.
That's correct. All right, the last section of the B budget of significance here is small office equipment, 577120. The print shop needs a new folding unit. So that comes to $4,932.24. That's a quote. We have 5 small printer replacements scheduled. There's 5 of those. There's coin-op copiers. We have one currently in engine service, talking to the clerk, and the controller. We have one for court, so we may not need that. I'd like to keep the 7,500 in there because we're going from coin-op to debit. And I don't know what the cost is going to be an increase on that. I'd like to keep it at 7,500 to cover that. Computer equipment, 577100. Yes, we have our own computer equipment replacement. It's pretty much the same as it was last year, pretty close. We do take care of public kiosks, computers, IT workstations, conference rooms. There's $48,000 we're projecting on that. We've got some monitors, new technology evaluation. That's $12,000 I put in there. That's the test and tune. If the department office wants to try something new with technology, we buy out of that before they both buy.
How old are your conference room computers,
We keep them in the same rotation, 5 to 6 years.
even though they don't get used that much?
Well, with that, we actually, for example, prosecutor Jeremy, he's had his almost coming on 7 years by the time we replace those. We do ask. If they don't use it, our IT training room equipment is the same microcomputers, they ran 7 years. So we do determine how much use we on those.
Madam Chair. And on the ordering and the replacement to upgrade to what fits in the system with PA, is IT going to be ordering those and they'll be asset tracking all those?
Commissioner, typically we do work with all the elected officials and department heads to order the equipment.
Okay.
I hope you have the opportunity.
Yes, and so that would be represented change because they have historically ordered their own equipment. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out, if we're gonna put everybody under the same umbrella, which I think is a good idea, we would streamline that, that would make sense to have IT order that and then track the asset when it comes in and distribute that to the officer department.
The standardization helps with licensing, fault finding, and all of that. But I will tell you, anything beyond the $1,000 for the board to sign, the PA's office does come through IT for that. I think the Chromebooks, they just treat it as a consumable. Because some of them are $200, $250. And if they kick over to actual laptops, they can run for longer. Those probably kick over the 1,000, they'll probably order those. They give us the opportunity to time.
And that, I would be able to support that.
And then really the last page is software and communications equipment. The communications equipment 57713 is really around Skype project and some other replacements. Again, there's a lot of notes out there, and there's a lot of, like I said, moving parts. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Big budget.
It is.
Thank you for the presentation and all the detail.
Do we have any questions? Zach, Chris?
No questions. Again, it's a big budget. We had a good meeting with Greg. I appreciate how he puts this together and touches on the highlights.
All right. Well then, it's 3:05 and that completes this meeting.
Thank you.
That's great.
3 days of a lot of information, isn't it?
Oh, boy.
I want to go.
One more to go.
I like it.